Good afternoon, everybody. I'm David Zier here with Steve Levy over at the America First Warehouse just outside of New York City. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. So many exciting events coming up at the America First Warehouse. It's just a great place here. And what a busy week we had. So many exciting events. Last night we filmed the pilot for All Fired Up with Andrew Giuliani, myself, Heather McBride, who was a former press secretary for Giuliani when he ran for governor. Very sharp cookie. And then we had Fred Rubino, comedian, the king of Brooklyn, and the king of Staten Island, Scott Lebedo, street artist, commentator. I threw the pizzas over the fence at City Hall, making a statement for small businesses being targeted, painted the blue line down the Staten Island Expressway in support of the cops during the George Floyd riots. A real patriot, and man, does he not mince words. I want to welcome everybody to the show. Steve Levy, the former Suffolk County executive, fighter, fiscal conservative, the head of the committee for
Center for
Cost-Effective Government. Sorry, I'm a little tongue-tied this morning. Also, with New York State Assemblyman, fierce campaigner. We're going to talk about the issues of the day, but before I do that, I want to talk about what's going on here at the America First Warehouse tonight on Real America's Voice News. Download the app or go to americasvoice.news, or you could go to Pluto, channel 470, or Getter, go to @RealAMVoice and watch the live stream. And you can also find us on Samsung TV, channel 1029, Select TV, Apple, Roku, Dish Network, channel 219. We are going to air the pilot of All Fired Up. Man, did we have a laugh, scream, riot last night. We talked about everything under the sun, made fun of everybody. You're not going to want to miss this show. I think it's going to be a hit going forward. More events coming up at the America First Warehouse. Don't forget the car show here every Sunday, 7:30 to 10:30 a.m. On One Comac Loop in Ronkonkoma here. And we also have the Save America rally tomorrow, Saturday, April 13th. Doors open at 6:30. I will be on the ground for Real America's Voice News in Schnecksville, Pennsylvania, just outside of Allentown. It's a red area. Ever so important, Pennsylvania. It's the only state that Trump is trailing behind right now in the presidential race, and we'll get into that in a second, as a battleground state. But that's going to be a great rally. 6,000 to 7,000 people expected. Nobody gets the numbers that Donald Trump does out there. That's for sure. And then don't forget, there's the boot camp for boomers in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, Wednesday, April 24th. Register today. You can go to, I think, amac.us website. Let me see if that's right. You can go to amac.us or just go to the americafirstwarehouse.com/events and go to the americafirstwarehouse.com/events for all the information on the warehouse. But that will be April 24th, Wednesday. Sign up today, and it's the premier conservative event in the state of Pennsylvania, brought to you by AMAC. That should be a lot of fun. So much going on. And don't forget, Mike Flynn coming here on Sunday, May 12th at the America First Warehouse. That's going to be an extraordinary event. His new movie, Deliver the Truth, whatever the cost. It's called Flynn. It's going to be an epic day here. So I wanted to, again, welcome Steve Levy to the show. So much to talk about.
With the hardest working guy in internet news.
Oh my God.
News, David Zier. I can't keep track where you are. I want your flyer miles.
I don't know where I am.
I
don't know where I am. But yeah, it's very exciting. I co-host live from Studio 6B every night at Real America's Voice News, and my show Breaking Point tomorrow. I have a great episode. I've got the head of Mountain States Legal Foundation, who's suing the airlines for their DEI policy, and also going to talk about airline safety, which is like really crazy. It's out of control what's going on. And I passed to David Lowery, who makes an appeal to Lara Trump and the RNC, and I pressed her on this at a press conference. When are you going to go into the inner cities and take the black vote? Because the Democrats have failed them in Chicago and all the major cities. And don't miss
did you
Pastor
see the
David
hugs?
Lowery.
Did you see the hugs that Donald Trump got the other day at the Chipotle? It was
Or Chick-fil-A, right?
Chick-fil-A, right?
Unbelievable.
Right. Boy, it's got to have the Dems, just out of their minds, their heads exploding.
Yeah, Biden
with
took
this.
everyone out for lunch, and he's eating a hamburger, and he got all the black kids fried chicken. That was awkward for him.
I'll tell you, I don't know if the actual vote in November is going to be reflective of what the polls show now with the diminishing of the black vote, the Asian vote, the Hispanic vote. But even if it's half that, the Democrats have a lot to worry about as far as that goes.
Yeah, I think they do, because if you take the cumulative of the Jewish vote, hopefully there'll be a small percentage. Now, Jews are only 4% of the population, I think, in the U.S. But if you lose 20% of that because of this pro-Palestinian stance from the Biden administration, and you take another 5 points in the black community and another 3 to say 8 points in the Hispanic community, that's a win for Trump.
Yeah, especially it all comes down to those swing states, those handful of swing states, and you could say that Florida's pretty solidly red now, but you never know, and the Jewish vote there can matter, as it might in Arizona. New York, I don't know if it's going to matter, because even though there's inroads, I don't see
It's 2-1 Democrat.
Yeah, California, New York, they're not going to change, but Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, especially if we have these third-party candidates on the ballot. Jill Stein's talking about going on again.
So I don't know if we can
Cornel
count
West.
on. Yeah, he could pull away from Biden, right? And RFK has $70
probably-
million.
Yeah.
He's got a
Now,
lot of money.
I still think he pulls more from Biden than Trump, even if it's not a Biden voter going from Biden to Trump. If it goes from Biden to Kennedy, that's a big deal. But Kennedy also may pull from the Republic, from
he
Trump
might.
as well. But I think it'll be a net blow to Biden. And you add 1 percentage point, half a percentage point in some of these swing states tilt the state. So
Yeah, I'm worried about Wisconsin. I just got back from Green Bay there. All 6 congressmen on the Republican side voted for the continue the budget. Didn't really put up a big fight over there. I did interview Congressman Tom Tiffany. He is a Trump supporter. But you got Mike Gallagher retiring, right? Leaving the seat open until January. And I looked up on opensecrets.org, which is a great website. Go there. It's a liberal-oriented website, but it keeps track of all the donors and contributors to all the races across the United States, going back to like 2019. And the top contributor to Mike Gallagher was Palantir, defense contractor. And, his largest donor, he went to work for and left Congress abruptly, leaving the seat open, leaving Congress in jeopardy of going over to Hakeem Jeffries. So I thought that was interesting. I'm worried about Wisconsin because I don't think they've addressed the fraud. Robin Voss is undergoing his second recall attempt. They knocked out the first one with the signatures. They said, 4,600 or so of them weren't valid or something. But there's another effort. Robin Voss is the state House Republican leader there, but not a Trumper. And I feel like these Midwestern states have Republicans, but they're not that far to the right.
We've got a template as to what works. Florida does almost everything right. I disagree with them from a political perspective on the abortion ban in 5 weeks. I think that's going to create problems. But let's get beyond that issue. They do it right on crime with the squatters. New York's got people staying in there for years. California, the same thing. DeSantis and his gang in Florida, bump, they end it. We're calling you a criminal. We're taking you to jail. We're giving the property back to people. With voting years ago, they just did it right. While all these other states were flummoxing. Who won the state? Florida's result, boom, no controversy. Had it that night. They now have voter ID.
Yeah,
They
North
even
Carolina too.
Right, they even have mail-in voting, and I'm not a fan of mail-in voting, but if you're going to do it, at least have the safeguards in place, which Florida did.
Yeah.
Why can't Republicans around the nation look to Florida and say, these guys do it right, we'll just follow
Well,
their lead, but they become part of this deep
because
state
I think a lot of
mentality, right?
Republicans don't want Trump to win in Congress. I look at Nebraska, right? They're trying to make it a winner-take-all state. The governor's on board with it, and that could be the difference if you got a 270, 269 tie in the Electoral College. And now, they had 4 of the 5 electoral votes last election went to Trump, but you've got Lincoln, Nebraska, Omaha, Nebraska, very
You get your
liberal.
college towns.
So you got so they put this through committee, and only 8 Republicans supported going winner take all, and 36 said no.
Yeah,
So what's up?
Another prime example.
And there are
of
only
some of
3
the
states out of
Republican-
winner take all states
Right.
now, I think.
Shifting gears a little
Oh,
bit. but-
I'm sorry, that aren't winner take all states.
right,
so
you got
the-
Maine that has.
Right, it's Maine and Nebraska, I
yeah,
think,
right.
maybe one other. So they should change it.
But look what the Republicans did originally, and it was since overturned thanks to Governor Abbott in Texas. How many times do Republicans talk about school choice? That it's so important to break that monopoly that the teachers unions have on our parents and our kids. And there's no question that charters just kick butt when it comes to performance and getting kids in our inner cities out of these failing schools. So here it is in Texas. We're going to do it. We're going to allow the tax dollars to follow the parent and the student so you can have some choice and get out of those trapped, horrible schools. It was the Republicans in their state house who were bought off by the teachers unions who blocked it. Thankfully,
Illinois,
Abbott-
too. They're
but
hostage to the
they-
teachers
right.
union, the
They
Republicans.
waged primaries
Yeah.
against these guys, knocked them out, and they're going to get this school choice provision through.
And what state are you talking
this
about?
Is Texas.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
Texas. We're not talking about New York. We're not.
Right.
Texas. They stopped it, and God bless Abbott. Went in. We're going to knock you guys out. He scared the hell out of them. Took a bunch of them out. That's going to go through.
Well,
Maybe that's what
I
we're doing in
don't.
Wisconsin.
I don't see any real fight in the Republican Party at large. And I know it's great that Lara took over. They have $93 million now. Trump raised $65 million this week alone between Atlanta, Orlando, and Mar-a-Lago. It was epic numbers. He's right on Biden's tail in fundraising. But I don't see the fight on those issues in the Republican Party. America First initiatives, accountability for spending in Ukraine, education. Where is the fight?
Yeah.
And it's only
You know-
the MAGA crowd that's fighting, that I feel.
On the one hand, we have to understand there's not a majority in both houses, and you need those majorities to get to where you want to get, like they have in Florida, where a DeSantis has that big majority in both his houses so it can get things done. So you have to play this game of making sausage with the Democrats to get things done. And I get that, Dave. I get it for a while. And you can do that a little bit. At some point, the only leverage you have as
Shut it
Republicans-
down.
It's the purse strings, and you've got to shut it down at some point. I don't think it should be done willy-nilly, but when you have your borders that have been eviscerated and our country is turning into something it never was, and we may never get it back, at what point do you say, enough is enough, this is the hill I'm going to die on? That's one issue.
Well,
The
we
second
watched it
issue-
in 95 and 96 when they shut down the government, the 104th
Mm-hmm.
Congress. They forced Clinton's hand for the largest tax cuts up until that point in history and balanced the budget by shutting down the government.
And we will say, the Republicans paid a price for that at the polls.
Yeah.
Short-term price. But at some point, you have to stick for principle. And now,
We had a
besides-
balanced budget in 2000 under Clinton.
We did.
Because of that.
We did. And besides that, we have, so many other issues to talk about where we need to draw the line, and the deficits are one of them. I mean, we are burdening our grandkids, not even the grandkids, our children, with a debt that is now becoming unsustainable. The interest that is paid on the debt in each of our annual budgets is now rivaling the costs for our military, for Social Security. It will soon be the highest single line item within our budget, and it just dissipates the remainder of your discretionary options within that budget. If that is not a national security issue, I don't know what is. At some point, you just have to say, shut it down to get their attention because nothing else has worked. And oh, you're going to shut it down. It's going to lead to all this chaos. Okay, so your parks are closed for a couple of months, okay? And
Yeah,
things
it's
get
all bull.
tied
They
up
could shut
with
it down.
Listen, I was a county executive who had to usher through our county after the real estate collapse in 2007. In my first year of that crisis, I said, we're cutting, I sent out a directive to every one of my department heads. You've got to cut your department by 10%, and if you don't, I will. Oh, we can't do it. They survived. The next year, I did the same thing. The next year, 3 years in a row, I did it. We
Yeah,
survived,
you did a great
David.
job with a multi-billion-dollar budget in Suffolk County. You know,
You got to force their hand.
I deal with the building departments here in New York, across Long Island. A lot of them are controlled by Republicans too, and you know, I could probably do the jobs of 4 or 5 people over there.
Absolutely.
You know, and there's some great people, and I don't want to knock everybody, but definitely there's a lot of fat across the board. The municipal unions are very strong in New York. They give money to both sides, and then the politicians become kind of hostage to them to give them lucrative contracts
Well, a
going
segue.
forward. Because you fought to cut the budget, and right out your successor gave astonishing increases to some county employees.
Yeah, and exacerbated the problems. And you want to talk about how Republicans can be in on that game as well. We have it in New York. Back in 2012, there were reforms made for the retirement system because here in New York, as in Illinois, as in California, and all these big blue states, the reason they're going broke is that the municipal unions are so powerful, and they get not only the Democrats, but in many times the Republicans in their back pocket as well.
Yeah.
So we had finally fashioned some reforms that said, you know, your pension for a teacher or a cop was going to be based on 5 years, right? Because it'll spread it out a little more and the pension will be a little lower. So the Republicans who team up with the Democrats say, no, let's just make it the last 3 years. Then we had reforms with overtime, that we were not going to allow all of this overtime that's garnered in the last year to take a $100,000 salary, double it, thereby giving these employees, public employees, pensions of 6 figures for the rest of their lives. They'll get a pension of $100,000 or more. It was changed so that this overtime would no longer kick in. So what are they doing when no one is looking? Let's change it back to where it was. And it's going to happen here in New York with Republican help. Come on, man. We got to hold them accountable.
There's no doubt about it. So let's talk about Mike Johnson, Speaker Johnson, going to Mar-a-Lago today, meeting with Trump. You know, Trump is the new, he's the GOP leader when it comes down to it, because it's going to be his agenda. A lot of congressional races right now are getting behind Trump because they feel it's going to help them. There's only a 1.5% majority in the average of the Real Clear Politics polling that the Republicans will keep the House or make any gains. And they're starting to come around and feel that with the Trump policy agenda, they can increase their lead in the House. But Trump's under fire. Mike Johnson under fire. MTG was on this morning on Real America's Voice News, and David Brody, one of my co-hosts on there, interviewed Johnson the other day and aired the interview. And it was a great interview, but MTG came out on fire, saying, you know, we're going to vacate the position because he has gone back on his promises to the Republicans in the House. What do you think?
You know, I hate this idea that one person can blow up the majority and put us into that gridlock again. But again, it goes back to what I said before with this, you know, these conflicting ideas. On one hand, you know, Trump has got to be saying to Johnson, boy, I think we're going to win this election in November. We have all the issues on our side. Do we want a distraction with the shutdown?
Yeah.
On the other hand, if you don't dig in your heels.
Just
as,
on the
as
border.
Green wants to do it, whether it's the border or the deficit. When do you ever do it? So I'm okay if they say, let's just get this to this election.
So
But
that's what Johnson's saying.
Yeah, yeah.
He's saying that, you know, because Trump funded Ukraine. He gave them 1,000 Javelin missiles. He promised the missile shield back in Poland. He had the toughest sanctions on Russia. Russia, listen, they're crazy, and they're aggressors. But, you know, Ukraine's also corrupt. And Mike Johnson saying, well, fund it just this one time, and then Trump can get them to the peace talks if they make progress against the Russians, you know, for the last half of the year. I mean, but
Well,
at
the
the same
problem-
time, we're
listen,
escalating the war.
I'm a big supporter of support. I'm a big supporter of helping Ukraine. I think Putin's the aggressor, and I think it sends a message if we stop him. However, I'm also on the side of those legislators, those congressional members who say, wait, we're worried about Ukraine's border, but not our own. So linkage, I'm all for it. I want to see Ukraine succeed. I want to see Putin
I don't think
crushed.
Putin's going to let that happen.
Well, with the proper armaments, we could at least keep him where he is. The question is, do we fold? Because early on, Republicans dug in their heels and said, that's it. We're not going to be dealing with borders in other countries if you don't take care of this border. In comes James Langford with a horrible compromise bill that makes all the other Republicans say, this is ridiculous, we're not supporting it. So now Johnson seems to be going down a path of, we tried to link it, it didn't work, so now let's just give the money, and the border continues to go on.
But the
in
Republicans
its
in
chaotic
Congress,
fashion.
the Republicans in Congress are committed to funding Ukraine.
I'm fine with that.
And you know, the Freedom Caucus doesn't agree with it, a lot of them, and you know, it's escalating. And you know, the big benefactor of funding Ukraine is the military-industrial complex. In 2023, our defense sector, private companies, made $83 billion alone.
But you could say that about funding Israel too, but
Well,
you really have to
Israel
look
is
at it on the
different
merits,
because
you know.
because I think Israel has merits,
Both-
and
both
they're
have to
under
be-
threat
both have to be
of
funded.
attack from the north and Hezbollah. That's going
Right,
to escalate. They want to wipe out the Jews. You know, Ukraine, you know, it happened under Democratic leadership voids. They came in 2014 under Obama. They came in again under Biden. They took Crimea under Obama. They went into Afghanistan under Jimmy Carter. So we caused this because we had that leadership void.
Democrats
So
caused
can
it
we
with their
go
weakness.
another 6 months before, say, Trump, if he gets elected, to come to the table and create a deal to keep the eastern
Well,
regions in Russia?
You hope
and Ukraine's got to let them
a
go.
deal for peace, but you also got to be. You can't have a deal just for the sake of having a deal. Of course, you know Putin's a bad dude. You know he said it from the start. The worst day of the 20th century had nothing to do with Hitler. It had to do with the fall of the Soviet Union, and he wants to reassemble it.
Yeah.
He's a warmonger. He's a
But I don't
horrible
think the
murderer.
other
We have to
NATO
stop
states
him.
are under threat by Putin. This isn't
Well,
to fold the
not
gap
now.
with the
You send a
Soviets
message.
outnumbering with tanks 5-1 in Germany, where they could cross the line and start World War III.
Well,
I
maybe
don't
not
think
NATO, but do you want
Putin's.
him to take Estonia? Do you want him to
I
take
don't think his
Romania?
ambitions are, you know, are Poland. I don't think he's
He
going to
wants
go
to
into
reassemble the
Romania.
old Soviet Union.
Maybe the Baltic states he wants to have
Are you
influence
okay
again.
with that? I'm not.
I'm not okay with Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, who had Spetsnaz forces go and shut down the TV stations years ago and all that. I'm not for that happening again. But I think the bigger issue is Putin a threat to Europe, and I don't feel that he is.
I think not only is he a threat, but how we react.
Why he wants
How
to
we
start World
react.
War III and ruin the world?
But how we react to him, it's being seen by Xi in China and the other Iran, the other bad actors.
Yeah.
Do we have the will to stand up to the aggressors? Now, it's so interesting that it's the Democrats trying to take the mantle of the champions against these guys. But it's their weakness that caused all this aggression, David, as you had said earlier. You know, Biden is the one who gave up on Afghanistan and left all those weapons for the Taliban and all the crazies in that part of the world to be using against Israel and potentially us. It was Biden who said to Putin, well, maybe if you just take a little bit of Ukraine will be
Well,
okay
I
with
think
it.
that
This
Putin's
is
very smart.
insanity.
Putin's very smart, and he's a chess player, and he's very smart. And he knows that he could get away with this because we don't have Trump in the White House.
Well, that's exactly
and
right.
and the big problem that we're facing now is that Ukraine with U.S. we're in a proxy war. The U.S. is the Ukraine basically military at this point, and we're killing Russian troops. And we wiped out 1/3 of the Navy in the Black Sea in Crimea of the Russians so far, and it's our multiple launch rocket systems, and it's our F-16s going to be in there, and it's our stuff. I feel that Putin cannot back down because it's humiliating for him. So he's
Yeah,
going to
but-
escalate this.
He's going to try, and if we don't fight back, I think it encourages, not we, but with our troops, but with support with NATO and the Ukraine, to stop him to send that message. And the worst thing that can happen for Putin are defeats on the battlefield, because then that weakens him domestically.
Yeah.
They are getting drained. They're getting drained with their people. So many Russians.
Yeah, but so
have
is
died.
Ukraine. They're drafting
are.
50-year-old women. There's
Sure.
mothers of 3 that are paratroopers in Ukraine.
Sure,
And
but
if it wasn't for the
that's an
Azov,
existential threat to them. They have to, or they're taken over.
if it wasn't for the neo-Nazi Azov battalions wanting to kill the Russians, Ukraine would be nowhere. And so it's like there's such a devastating cost. I don't believe that I supported Ukraine becoming part of NATO 20 years ago, and we should have done it back then, because I was for them being a former Soviet territory to gain their freedom, and I think that was the time to do it. And we negotiated a deal which didn't allow them to do it. I think to do it now is World War III.
Well, I'll tell you,
To make them
this
part of
aggression
NATO.
from Putin, though, happened before NATO ever said anything about letting Ukraine in.
No,
This has always
but
been
back
his
in 05,
desire.
though, if you remember, when we got Ukraine to give up their nukes, and we made deals that we would
The nukes were
protect them
given
as
up
long as they
with
didn't join
Clinton.
NATO.
In the Clinton era.
Right.
And that's another reason why we have an obligation to defend them. We told them,
Yeah.
you give up your nukes, don't worry. If there's ever any Russian aggression against you, we'll have your back. And we have to live
I
up
think
to
the
that.
lines would have been drawn easier if they did this 25 years ago.
I think you're right that it would have been, if you were going to do it, that would have been the wiser time. But again, Putin came in before NATO ever said a thing that, okay, we're in negotiations with you now to bring you in. So he's a bad dude. But, segueing to
Yeah.
the Democrats causing that problem, just like Biden is abandoning our ally of Israel and siding with terrorists. I never thought I'd see the day, David, but it's absolutely disgusting. Imagine, it's 1945, and our allied troops are at the edge of Berlin, and we've got entities within our country and from afar saying, no, you really don't want to go there because you'll create a humanitarian
Patton wanted to.
crisis.
Patton wanted to keep going east.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, we didn't stop.
We gave the
France.
Baltic states to the Soviet
Well,
Union.
that's true. They were advancing, from the east as we were coming from the west. They beat
Yeah.
us to it. But could you imagine people saying, "Hey, President Roosevelt, stop the bombing of Germany because you're killing civilians.
Yeah.
Stop, your encroachment into Germany because people are starving and there's a humanitarian crisis." They would have put those people in prison for saying something like that.
Yeah.
And now you have Biden backing off from our allies, who are Israel, who are truly in an existential threat for survival. And the best thing to do for peace there, let Israel win. Let them
Yeah,
win now.
no, they gotta
Take
do
their
it now.
handcuffs off, just like ISIS. Barack
Well, even Trump
Obama-
said you have to do it now to Israel
That's
because you
right.
can't let this go on.
What happened with ISIS? Barack Obama and his timid America from behind approach said, military, be careful about what you do. We've got to be worried about collateral damage.
Trump put them at bay in 90 days.
That's exactly it. Trump came in and told the generals, Just win, baby, win. Within a couple of months, they were decimated. Lives were saved.
You know, at the rallies, Trump's funny. He's like, and General Raisin Kane came in and said, "Sir, we can take them out." Well, I wanted to shift gears a little bit really quick into a couple of other items here. I'll be on the ground for the Trump trial Monday and Tuesday in Manhattan for Real America's Voice News. And you talk about a gross election interference. Trump will be tied up for weeks in court, and while Biden's campaigning,
criminal trial, so he can't leave.
Only president ever in a criminal
Right.
trial.
Unlike a civil trial, he was able to pop in and then get out of there.
Yeah.
He's got to be there.
But Bill Clinton lied to the grand jury 37 times during the Lewinsky scandal, and there were no criminal charges. So
The double standards are absolutely mind-boggling. But on this one, I've said it before, it's like the only case I can remember where the person who was getting blackmailed, and that was Trump, give me money or I'm going to spill the beans on this and that. The person blackmailing him doesn't go to jail or get indicted. He gets indicted for entering into a settlement which is perfectly legal, that is done all the time in the corporate world. But now you've got Alvin Bragg, a total hack, who takes this case on, David, after the Southern District of New York said, no, there's no evidence here, there's no crime here. After the previous DA in New York, prior to Bragg, said, no, we can't go there. Bragg comes out because some guy in the DOJ, a Democratic political hack, retires and writes a book, which, by the way, probably should get him disbarred for spilling inside information like that. So then Bragg says, well, I've got to bring this case or I'm going to look bad to my Democratic base. He brings a case saying that it was an improper campaign contribution after we already had the John Edwards case years and years ago, which was a far more incriminating case against him, and he gets exonerated on that count. So this is totally bogus. But you know what my fear is, David? It's New York, baby. I think he's going to get convicted.
Oh, yeah.
I think he's going to get... Now, it'll be appealed, of course, and he'll probably win on appeal. But in this lower court, that jury... And the jury, can I just say one more thing? Because my head's going to explode.
Sure.
How about this? The questionnaire for the jurors. Have you ever contributed to Donald Trump? Do they ask, have you ever contributed to Joe Biden?
Yeah.
Are you a Democrat going on to that panel? They don't ask that. They don't care. They only want to exclude Trump supporters. They don't care if it's a Trump hater.
Yeah, there's no hope for the city. I think a Trump conviction propels him another 5 points in the polls, because I think it's the writings on the wall that he will be convicted, just like the fake E. Jean Carroll case. It's all fake. She doesn't remember the year, the date, the time, the day, the month, the decade when she was raped, apparently, in Bergdorf Goodman, and the dress that she was talking about, like Andrew Giuliani pointed out last night, what didn't come out until 5 years after the event supposedly happened, and he got convicted in a civil court. You know, they fined him, but
Isn't it a kick that it was Avenatti from prison who even said Trump can't get a fair trial in New York? Avenatti said that, and it's
he's
so
a
true.
real bad guy too. And but you're going to have Letitia James, the civil fraud. You're going to have the E. Jean Carroll case, and you're going to have this. You're going to have three basic convictions. In New York against Donald Trump in an election year, all of it bogus, and Putin throws you out of windows or puts polonium-210 in your coffee to get rid of you. And here we use lawfare to take out our political opposition. So are we any better than the Russians?
We're better than the Russians, but we're going down a path that's really, really scary, David. Another example. There used to be a sacred concept of attorney-client privilege, right?
Yeah.
That's
gone. In the J6 case, that's
Look
gone.
What's going on? They are now having Trump's former attorney having to testify against his client. That never happens in America. They raided Rudy Giuliani's home office, Rudy Giuliani, the attorney for Donald Trump.
Yeah.
They raided the office of
They
Michael
do it to
Cohen,
the
who was a total
J6ers.
scumbag,
Yeah.
but he was still Trump's attorney. Did they raid Hillary Clinton's
No.
house, her attorney?
Great point.
Did they raid Hunter Biden's attorney's office or Hunter Biden's house? No, they tipped off Hunter Biden. The FBI
Yeah.
tipped off Hunter Biden that they were going to come in and raid his house, which, by the way, never happened anyway because
They're an
they put the
apparatchik
kibosh
for
on
the
it.
Democratic Party now. It's
Absolutely.
different. It's a different FBI than it was 25 years ago. Let's go. We have 5 minutes left. Let's talk about the economy. We'll talk about inflation. Grapes $5.99 a pound instead of $1.99. Lettuce $2.75 a head instead of $1.50. I think the inflation's higher than 28%.
Oh, let me tell you, what people don't realize, there was an awesome article in New York Post the other day, that even when the inflation got up to 9%, it was not an accurate reflection of what inflation was. Because if you look back to the Jimmy Carter years, which were considered the baseline of the highest inflation ever, right? They then included your mortgage payments, where
They're not
thereafter-
including shelter inflation, right?
They changed the calculation as to how you determine the inflation number.
Yeah.
Had we been using the same number as they did in the Carter years, we would be at that 16, 18%.
Yeah, because shelter
level.
inflation is like 80 or 90% of real inflation costs.
Absolutely. You're paying right now, because of the interest rates, about $1,000 per month more
Yeah,
for a
It's about
typical
$12,000
mortgage
a year.
than you would have in the Trump era. And when you had Biden the other day saying, when I came in, inflation was out of control and
Whatever.
we're taming it. Dude, the inflation was 1.4% when you came in, and not a single liberal reporter followed up with that. Not a
Yeah, they're
single one of
disgusting.
them called him a liar.
So,
when he
okay,
said that.
James Carville famously said it's the economy stupid, right?
Yep.
That was him who said that, right? And you know, it's all about the economy. So in 5 months, do you think that, and with these new CPI numbers and the truth coming out and the job numbers are all federal jobs, are all part-time jobs, you know.
And illegal aliens getting them.
Will that shift to more MAGA votes?
If it stays this way. But they play games with numbers. I remember in 2012, Obama and Romney were really close. And we were all waiting in October for that last quarter GDP amount to come out. And it was a pretty robust number. It was a good number. And everybody was scratching it. Wow, that's a really good number. So people were starting to think, oh, you know, things are getting better. What happened in January, David? They adjusted the numbers back. Oops, we made a mistake. We overestimated the growth in the GDP. You've been seeing this now for the last couple of years, where job numbers would be disclosed by the federal agencies. You'd get the big headline. A couple of months later, they revised those numbers way down and say, oops, when nobody was looking. You will continue
Well, California
to see that.
did it. They had
Right.
325,000 job growth in 2023, and they revised it down to only 50,000.
Yeah, it's just that these are the games that these guys play. And, you know, I was expecting like 3 major rate cuts by a very politically charged Fed leading right up to the election to boost those numbers for Biden. But things are happening now where they've got to slow down. And in fact, you even had Larry Summers, the Democratic economist, warning, don't do that rate cut because it will be a major mistake. This is the same guy who warned Biden, if you do this Build Back Better and your trillions of dollars in spending, it's going to lead to major inflation. And he was right.
I did a car lease that 3 years ago would have been $500. It's now $730.
Oh, my God.
For the same,
I
for the
bought out
same
my
lease.
lease.
So that's another
because I didn't
$3,000
wanna
a
do
year
it.
just in car
Sure.
expenses.
And by the way, I just paid a home heating bill.
Yeah.
I had to lock
It's
in.
like $4 a gallon
At
now.
$4, I was locked in at $4 a gallon last year.
So at the pump, oil's going up to $4 a gallon again.
Hey, you're right, but you're paying, people don't realize, just your home heating oil, that's another $1,000 a year, $1,500 a year than when Trump was there. People know this. When you're filling up at the tank, it's another $2,000 or $3,000 a year cumulatively when you add that
Yeah.
up. When you're paying your mortgage, if you got that higher interest, it's another $10,000
Well, if you had
a
an
year that
adjustable,
you're
you're
paying.
screwed.
Yeah, it's like really, really scary. And And that's why these liberal commentators, they're scratching their heads. Why don't people get it? Look at the robust numbers on the jobs.
Because they're
and
stepping over the
and
bodies
stock
on their way to
market.
Starbucks.
That's right.
You know, and that's figurative too, not just literally in New York City. You know, but they live in another world. I deal with these journalists on the road. You know, as one guy I deal with Vaughn, really nice guy, Vaughn Hilliard from NBC, very nice guy. I deal with other mainstream media reporters on the road, and he's one of the better ones. But they're out of touch. You know, they're making a lot of money, and you know, they don't have to deal with the same problems you and I have to
They're
deal
not
with.
only out of touch, they're so biased, and we've known that there's a bias forever on the left. But there was a great interview that came out of Yuri Berliner, an editor over at National Public Radio, NPR, which we know is an arm of the Democratic Party, and why they continue to get tax dollars is mind-boggling. But he came out and admitted he did some research on the editorial staff at NPR. 87 people, 87 registered Democrats, 0 Republicans.
And basically, you were saying that, and they're admitting that the Russia hoax, they were pushing and they knew it was fake.
They knew it was fake. They were pushing it because they said it stemmed from their hatred for Trump, and they felt they were doing the greater good, being activists to stop Trump. So they made
You
it
know,
up.
I love watching NPR. Listening to NPR. You know, they have the atheist music playing in the background. You know, it's like you're in a redwood tree in Northern California. But
I didn't know there was atheist music.
there is atheist music. But I was on NPR in the past. You know, they're just a spin machine.
Did you lower your voice and put in the NPR
yes,
voice?
Yes,
okay.
I did. Because I don't think the liberals really care about what is said. I just think
an
they
echo
just,
chamber.
yeah. Well, you know, and listen, people can make the same accusation for the MAGA crowd, Real America's Voice News and stuff, but when
But you say your opinion.
I flip around the channels in the morning, right, on streaming. You've got The First, you've got Bloomberg TV, you've got Bloomberg Surveillance Radio, you've got Newsmax, Newsmax 2, Real America's Voice, and then you got the Young Turks.
Yeah.
And I listen to all of it. And the Young Turks, outside of Anna Kasparian, which has some favorable qualities, she's criticizing the Democratic Party like you can't believe, they have their head up their ass.
Oh, they're crazy.
And you know, on Real America's Voice News, we bring facts to the table. We bring guests to talk all the time, and they're just sitting in a vacuum talking for hours with no guests and everything. And you know,
But Dave, I'm all right with opinion radio,
Yeah.
opinion TV, opinion. We're doing opinion right now.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll throw out some facts, but this is my opinion. You may agree or disagree with. I'm not coming on here like Jake Tapper,
Yeah.
pretending that I'm Walter Cronkite and here's the straight news. When you see that in CNN, you laugh. When you read it in the New York Times or the Washington Post, they actually think that they are the independent source of news.
Yeah.
They're an arm of the Democratic Party.
Well,
Just admit it,
they're
you know?
evil, is what they are, because they are projecting that lie, and it's projection. Trump's not threatening democracy; they're threatening democracy.
Name
They're the
one-
one who take their opposition off the ballots,
That's
both
right.
on their own side and
Absolutely.
the opposite side.
They're the ones who cancel people. They're the ones who go to social media to quash speech from the other side. No speech was quashed on the liberal side when Donald Trump was the president. So, he's going to become a dictator. He was there for 4 years. Was he a dictator? Did we lose our freedoms? No. Biden came in, and if you're a Republican, you're losing your freedoms because his FBI, his DOJ, is aggressively coordinating with social media to take your post down if it's critical of the state.
Yeah.
And we had a lawsuit where a federal judge said this was the most egregious violation of the First Amendment in American history.
There's no doubt about it. We're out of time here. I just wanted to remind people to go online to the AmericaFirstWarehouse.com and then go to the events page or just go to the AmericaFirstWarehouse.com/events. But find us on social media on Getter. Get a Getter account right now, and we're at the AFW, and go on to X, Twitter, and find us at America First WH. Go on Facebook, the America First Warehouse. Go on Truth Social, the America First Media Campus, or the America First Warehouse. We're on Instagram under the America First Warehouse, I believe, as well. We're on all the platforms. Check them out today. Great events. General Flynn coming on May 12th. Don't miss tonight on Real America's Voice News, midnight. All fired up with Andrew Giuliani and the panel. I was part of that panel last night. We had a laugh, scream, riot here. Don't miss the show, midnight. Real America's Voice News. You can watch it on Getter. At Real AM Voice, or you can watch it on Samsung TV channel 1029, Pluto channel 470, Dish Network channel 219, Apple, Roku, or just download the Real America's Voice News app, or go to americasvoice.news. And I want to thank Steve Levy for joining us today, and we want to thank Joe the Box. This was the inspiration of his vision here for America First. I want to thank Dan at the controls today. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
See you next time.